We need to have a standardized of pharmaceutical reps.
The people that provide education, the doctors.
Who is the chairman and CEO.
The fascination the public has.
The impact on society, the impact on unemployment.
There is no way that our healthcare system can possibly accommodate the demand that is going to be placed on it, is being placed on it, is going to be placed on it without implementing AI tools.
Behind every patient is a messy trail of charts, scans, and notes. But imagine turning that chaos into clarity, so doctors spend less time chasing paperwork and more time saving lives. Today, we're going to be talking to Mika, who's a healthcare innovator who's on a mission to transform healthcare with cutting-edge technology. Mika, welcome to the podcast.
Well, it's awesome to be here. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. So for those of you that don't know Mika, he's a healthcare technology innovator. He's the CEO of xCures, where he's led the company's transformation into a SaaS platform delivering AI-powered precision medicine and real-time clinical decision support. He has over 2 decades of leadership experience spanning life sciences, healthcare analytics, and evidence-based research. He's been recognized for his ability to translate cutting-edge data solutions into practical tools that helps ultimately deliver better care delivery and accelerate research. And he's a speaker and a panelist at many leading healthcare and technology forums where he shares insights on AI. So really excited to talk to you today, Mika. And, looking at what your company does, it's very, very interesting, especially as it relates obviously to healthcare and what we're seeing with healthcare in terms of the transformation right now with everything going on. But maybe take us back. What first drew you to healthcare data and analytics, and what, kind of helped fuel your passion and build what you've built?
Well, that's a great question. So I've done healthcare since the very beginning, or life sciences in healthcare since the very beginning. I started off in proteomics, genomics, and computational chemistry, software applications, always loved software and data. Did some proteomics work, did middle management, which kind of fits into your career right in the middle, where middle management comes in, and then ended up wanting to do startup companies. I just really liked smaller organizations, and that brought me into the use of technology for health economics, for market access, for policy making, and then eventually xCures. But the common theme through all of that is I'm just fascinated with all the data and knowledge we have, and what are the technology layers that you can put on top of it. So my passion has always been, can we improve human condition, human life, human outcomes, and really put technology to work for us?
How did you start? From a training perspective, because people listening to this sometimes wonder, how do people become CEOs of companies like this? What was that like? What kind of walk us through your path when you were in school? What did you study? And how did that kind of lead to where you are today?
Gosh, I would say, why do people become CEOs? You sure got me, beats me. It's certainly not the job that I think most people think it is. It's and I hear that commonly when I talk to my peers. You'd be surprised but if people ask me what do I do, I'm always like, someone's got to clean the toilets around here, right? So I studied biology and biotechnology at a place called WPI early on. So it was basically a biology degree. The tech part of it is I did some additional coursework in corporate finance and accounting, which ended up being pretty useful, and a little bit of stuff around computer science, because I was just interested in computers at the time. When it came out, and then I went into the workforce, honestly, and started working, and I worked my way up through sales management, all the way to sales operations. That was kind of the middle management comment I made earlier. And then when I started working in startups, the reason I started doing that is because I realized in the bigger organizations, I did not swim well in my own lane. Right? I could not stay in my swim lane. I always wanted to do more and try to optimize the way the organization was working on that. And so going into smaller organizations then and starting to build functional units. And for me, that was around commercial, sales units at first, and then sales and integrated marketing, and then sales, marketing, and strategy, and managing more complex relationships. I actually think is a pretty good pathway for the startup CEO. And the reason I say that is that a big part of the job is managing investors and customers, managing perception, and then managing and building a team that really needs to believe in your leadership. And those are all skills that I don't know that you necessarily can go to school to get. I really think you got to kind of learn them in the real world. And, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I think you have to kind of fail over and over again. And so I'm a huge fan of conscious deliberate, try things that are, bite off more than you can chew and live with the failure and learn from it and go back and do it again.
Sure.
Yeah.
What do you think of people that say, you know what, AI, when it comes to healthcare, can replace potentially a lot of the work that primary care physicians do? Because I mean, I'm sure you've heard this. A lot of people go get an MRI or go get a CT scan, and it comes in their my chart, right? Sometimes they get it before the doctor gets it, and then what happens is they get the MRI report, they just take it and they upload it in the chat GPT and say, hey, give me this report in layman's terms and just tell me to understand what it means for me. And a lot of times the doctor hadn't even, given the patient a call to give him what the results mean. And so, when you think about primary care physicians or, nurse practitioners, PAs, pharmacists who prescribe, a lot of them had a role in helping to prevent diseases, helping to treat a lot of more common diseases in the primary care setting. But with ChatGPT and then with COVID and telemedicine, how do you think things will change in the next few years for the primary care market?
So I think the thing that needs to be understood about AI in healthcare is the state of resourcing in healthcare in general, right? We just do not have enough healthcare resources, and we're off by like orders of magnitude. So in fact, if we don't do AI, we're hosed. Like there is no way that our healthcare system can possibly accommodate the demand that is going to be placed on it, is being placed on it, is going to be placed on it without implementing AI tools. I have thought about this problem a lot. There's simply no other way. Let me give you a couple of really specific examples about this. We'll start with the first one we looked at xCures. So the company is now disease agnostic, but we started in the cancer space. And one of the things that we realized in cancer, and this was in a report from a few years ago that ASCO did, was that by 2025, so this year, the United States would be short some, I think, I won't get the number exactly right, so we're short some 2,200 plus oncologists.
Wow.
When I first saw that number, I was like, oh, well, not a big deal. There's only 13,000 oncologists in the whole country. So imagine 2,000 over 13, like that's a big gap. And then fit into that, right, the fact that by 2030, all of the baby boomers are going to be over 65, all of them. So we'll have 80 million Medicare eligible beneficiaries in this country, right? So massive group of people moving into the healthcare system, come to the point in their life where all of them, a great proportion of them have one chronic disease or multiple comorbidities, are going to be requiring resources. Cancer, obviously very acute, is a small part of that, but the exact same thing applies to primary care, and particularly if we start moving more and more, which we've been doing, into value-based care models. There's just not enough primary care physicians. So to think that they're going to be replaced by AI is wrong. They have to be augmented by AI. If they're not augmented by AI, we got a big problem.
I agree. And the other day I had on the president of the American Medical Association, Bobby McCamala, and we were talking about this issue because there's a lot of studies to show the more primary care physicians you have, the better the quality outcomes in that particular region of the country and whatnot. So I agree. I think a lot of that is fear mongering with AI, in terms of replacing physicians. But I agree with you in the sense that AI is really there to enhance and augment, create more efficiencies in terms of what they do. So with that, talk to us a little bit about what you guys do at xCures and how it helps healthcare systems, providers, et cetera.
Yeah, let me, I'm going to go back to your previous question, and then I'm going to answer the one you just asked me.
Sure.
So the way I'm going to tie that together, the place I think AI has the most immediate application in the case of primary care and value-based care is actually in removing and streamlining administrative burden. So specifically things like understanding what is happening with a patient, what's happened to a patient in the past. So reading and interpreting their medical history, basically filling in and completing the forms that need to be done in order to move through the processes, and automating and speeding all of the administrative process, which we all hate. Like, I don't know how many health histories I've filled in my life. I actually don't even do them anymore. I just try to sign the thing as quickly as possible, right. And the staff gets really upset at me. Like this is very common. Coming as a byproduct of that, right, is the ability, for instance, to score. And I've written a little bit about this and talked about it. Like, picture all of the healthcare gaps. So if you just take evidence-based medicine, and the standard of care, the stuff that every American Heart Association guidelines for cardiovascular treatment, American College of Cardiology, most people aren't even treated to those standards. So if we could simply identify the people who should be treated to those standards and present them to their primary care doc and say, hey, we just missed this guy or gal, and we missed this thing, so can you address this at the next visit and move through it? By the way, outcomes would be way up. It would deal with a lot of financial issues. There's shared savings, et cetera. So let me tell you a little bit about how xCures fits in that story. So the story of xCures starts with trying to build a learning health system. And learning health systems and the idea of a health system that continually learns from every patient encounters been around for a long time, but I never seen one. Like the idea has been there, but no health system actually processes in real time its data and then starts adapting its processes to it. And there's lots of reasons why that's the case. And we started focusing on cancer, on all the really sick advanced cancer patients who are not in clinical trials. So arguably, let's just pick 5% because there's lower and higher estimates of advanced cancer patients get into a clinical study. The rest of those patients are treated. They do things and something happens to them, right? So our goal was, could we get involved in the decision-making of that other 95% of patients, and through understanding what was being done correctly or incorrectly in that decision-making, build better software tools, basically decision support tools. What we learned in doing that is that actually decision support and making decisions turns out to not be the easy part of the problem, but the easier part of the healthcare problem. Right. And the reason it's easier is because the total range of options that are available at each decision node are actually fairly finite. Like there's not like an infinite number of things you can do in any system. There's not an infinite sort of things that'll be covered by your insurance. And like all of this like reality of healthcare actually constrains the decision environment to like a pretty narrow set of things. The problem we ran into over and over again, and this is what we ended up solving, were the input variables. Like I can't run a computer algorithm or tell an AI to solve a problem if I can't give it accurate information about the patient in the first place. And so we ended up going really deep and building a platform that essentially replaces the function of a human being reading a medical record and typing it into something else. It's basically chart review. And that function, go to any hospital facility, go to anywhere and look at how many people you see reading from one screen and typing it into another one. And that cannot be a good use of human capital, in my opinion.
Sure.
That's what we're after.
Got it. So you automate that process with AI.
Yeah. So we aggregate, organize, and structure medical records. So think of this like as of 2024, so last year, we have a robust, working well internet of medical records, so interconnectivity between all of the major hospital systems and covered entities in the United States, which means there's still a lot of like fax going back and forth, but given the right technology and permissions, you can basically access a digital copy of somebody's entire medical record and transfer it down. That sounds great, except if you get 10 years worth of medical documents from someone, it's a big mess, right? It's come from different systems. It contains structured data. It contains unstructured notes. It has pictures of stuff, the lab reports and stuff. It might be scanned images. So we take all of that and make it look like the person has been in a single medical record system for their entire life, including adding in the complex inferred things like tumor stage and grade in cancer, or maybe things about family history where you mentioned your mom had an illness and it just got typed in the notes, right? Or you talked about your father and someone just wrote it in, it didn't get coded. So all of that turns into a single structured piece of data. And then we can implement an AI on top of that and ask questions like, hey, if this person is hypertensive, were they prescribed a medicine for hypertension? And if so, are they taking it, right? And is it working? Is their blood pressure controlled? So these are the types of questions that rely on having a really normalized set of data to start with.
And I would imagine that this helps to reduce errors, right? Because you're taking out the human component of it. And I'm sure like with data entry, as they're putting information, and there's probably errors. I know, on the pharmacy side, I was the founder of US Pharmacy Lab, which I've now sold, but that was a big issue, is medication errors in the pharmacy system. I mean, are you guys finding that that's helped to mitigate some of those things?
So we actually looked at medication reconciliation as a primary use case, just as an evaluation. And when we took a sample of 10,000 patients and we went through and looked at what was in the coded data, so stuff like a pharmacy system would have seen versus what was all the information in their medical record. Like if we actually read everything, we found we were missing 20% of the medications for each patient. So how can you do medication reconciliation if you're, and that was across everything. If you go to oncology or rare disease, that number is like 60 or 70% is missing because it might have gone into an infusion pump, right? All these other places. So there's two things, because you asked about error. Number one, you find things, but number two, you flag opportunities, right, for improvement. And one of the important things with AI here is you got to be able to validate it and know how well it works. Humans make mistakes, like you just said to them. So we want to compare, are the humans or the machine better or worse? And then the second thing that you need to be able to do, and I think this is really critical, is be able to link everything that's given to us by AI to the evidence, which goes back to like the basic prevalence of all things. Like if you're going to tell me something, then I want to know where it came from, show me the exact document, let me go verify it if I want to.
How does this all feed into this idea of personalized medicine? A lot of people have been talking about personalized medicine. How could this help? I mean, could this make the ability for the healthcare system to diagnose and treat patients in a more personalized way?
100%, right? So if you think about, think about personalized medicine just in the context of evidence-based guidelines. Like if you're not on the guidelines personally, and you can just say like, hey, your blood pressure is not controlled, or you're taking a medication that is not appropriate for where you are, that in itself is personalizing the experience. Instead of the doctor trying to remember the protocol in their head and step through it, they're being highlighted and flagged. There's also a growing complexity in the different modalities of therapy. So let's take specialty therapeutics as an example. Like if you think about specialty pharma, right, and a lot of new drugs coming out, there are a lot of things that have to happen. Number one, you want to make sure that the patient is eligible. So when the physician and the patient are considering a drug, you really need to know, is that patient in the right target audience? Do they meet the criteria, first of all, for using the drug? And then secondarily, for all of the downstream things like prior authorization, reimbursement, like all of those pieces. The abandonment rates, for instance, in specialty medicine, to me, the numbers I get quoted are like 40% abandonment because of an inability to handle the administrative piece. So going back to where there's a huge opportunity here for upside, making that flow, which I know you understand well from your pharmacy background, accurate and quick, right? And like easy is just, it's kind of good for everybody.
Oh yeah. I mean, listen, anything you could do to streamline that administrative burden, I mean, is huge. Talk to me a little bit about what's going on this year. I mean, this year especially, there's been a lot of policies that have been proposed in healthcare. Things have been shifting. There's been a lot of attention on what's happened with, unfortunately, United Healthcare CEO who was, murdered in the beginning of the year. And so I know for me, I've been going out, talking to a lot of folks in the media about this issue. What's the climate like now, among healthcare providers, among healthcare systems or healthcare administrators, when it comes to just, all these issues, administrative burden, the greater focus now from the public on it, given what happened? What are you seeing?
I think people are really concerned. There's a lot of pressure from the administration, I think the right way, around data sharing, a strong mandate for enforcement about information blocking and making sure that information can flow, that are enabling for all of these technologies. And then so that's kind of like exciting, but then there's also a fair amount of trepidation, I think, from people. So think about providers are really deeply worried about the risks of data transfer, and are they going to be on the line and right, responsible for the liability related to like HIPAA breach, right? And so the data is starting to move around. We're starting to have all these applications, but I think fundamentally, in my opinion, we're running into some issues that I think are probably going to need some legislative attention at some point. Like we have a lot of laws like HIPAA that's been around for a long time that tried to imagine a world like the one we live in, but don't really accommodate it anymore. And there's new risks. So think of the risk of AI and AI-based error, right? And who holds the liability for that is like a self-driving cars sort of problem at the same time. And I think when you put all of that together, what you see are people are excited. They're worried about all this stuff. Like they get excited about the potential, and then they think about all the potential downsides. And what we're all struggling with is like, what are the concrete steps that we can take next? And there, I think the question for me is, what is the speed to value question? Meaning, what are the things that I can do that create immediate tangible value? Because I want this future, but I know if it doesn't start working like people won't have a lot of patience for it, right? A big data breach will turn everybody off, right? For instance, so like, how do we get speed to value as an industry?
And I mean, on that point about speed to value, what would you say so far is the most difficult challenge you face as CEO? You know, when you're kind of navigating your day to day, what's the thing that kind of keeps you up at night?
I worry about regulatory processes and burden and the lack of clear examples in there. So we're kind of at the front edge of interoperability, right? And interoperability and data processing. So we often touch things that people just haven't seen before, or if they've heard about it before, they've never done it before. They've never been involved in that type of exchange or relationship. And so it takes a long time to kind of work out the regulatory relationship and the policies. And so I worry about, we want to keep pushing the future, but we don't want to get ahead of our skis, right? We don't want to run the risks associated with that. I worry a lot about InfoSec security. We sit on a lot of PHI for patients that I worry about, right? How do we protect that sort of stuff? And then I also feel like there's a lot of players who have different interests in the process. And how do we mediate together to, again, kind of find the path in the middle for everyone to be able to do things that matter?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I think one of the things too that a lot of people think about when it comes to AI is the liability. I think that's something that you brought up earlier. Who do you think should be liable? I mean, if an algorithm puts out misinformation, or is it the health system? Is it the AI company? Is it the user? What do you think?
I think it's probably all of the above, unfortunately. And we need to, if the company produces a bad algorithm, it doesn't test it well, right? And it produces clearly erroneous results, and there've been malfeasance in like the way that they develop and test it, and it goes to market and someone starts using it because of false claims, like that seems like their fault. At the same time, doctors carry malpractice insurance and they have a ethical and moral obligation, right, to treat the patient. So regardless of what some tool told you as the physician, shouldn't you be doing what you know is the right thing to do? And you were trained at the medical school, and then the systems are funding this. I think where we're going to see things get teased apart is when you start looking at the financial incentives underneath it. So that's where I always think, like, if you want to pull the thread, right, think about medical device AI. Well, why does someone want to do a medical device and go to the FDA? It's because they want to make a marketing claim, right, about it.
Right.
So the FDA is regulating the label and the marketing claim. And the reason they want to make a marketing claim is so that they can get reimbursement or charge for some financial value around that. So in that way, they are taking responsibility through what they want to be able to market the product as. And that, I think, starts to drive, did they do a good job? So I think you have to be really careful about incentives in this process.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, look, it remains to be seen what's going to happen. When I think of AI, to me, it's like any other type of technology, right? Whether it's an MRI or a blood test or anything like that, right? Where the doctor, from my perspective, ultimately is the one who's responsible for the patient. They're trained, and they're the ones that really should be the ones that are responsible for making that final call. So if I go to get an MRI and a radiologist misses something on the MRI, could I blame the quality of the images in the MRI machine? Probably not, right? I would say it's probably the radiologist who might need more, better images, who would tell a technician, hey, I need better images, or, ultimately they missed it, and that's on them. So I think that, because I know there's a lot of talk about, for example, using AI to read pathology reports and radiological reports. That's a big thing now. I think it's good for efficiency, but I still think in those situations, the stakes are really high that you need a human touch. So I think to me, it depends on what the stakes are, right? How high the stakes are. If the stakes are very high, you're dealing with a situation where people are coming in and they're doing an MRI and they're concerned about, a presence of a mass, right? A malignant tumor or something like that. In situations like that, I think you have to make sure that you have somebody that's like some type of quality check. You know what I mean? So I just think it depends on the circumstances. I know for us at the ACMA, the company that I run, we work in prior authorization, and we have tools that we give to field reimbursement specialists, prior auth specialists, people that go out and talk to doctors. But at the end of the day, that representative is still responsible for making sure that information that goes out is accurate, right? They need to somehow be able to vet that. It's just like, in law, I heard, I don't know, it was probably about a month or two ago, I heard the story where an attorney put together a deposition. The whole thing was developed by ChatGPT. He didn't even go to check that the reference cases were real. Turns out the reference cases didn't even exist. But the attorney never checked, ended up getting, the bar lost his license. So I think, there's still a level of responsibility on the professional who's going to use the tool, right? I mean, it still becomes our ultimate responsibility. Anything you want to leave the audience with in terms of where you see the field going, or anything that's kind of like, it's the last message you want to leave to everybody about the work that you're doing and how it could impact healthcare in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I'm very optimistic. And I think what you're saying about the humans in the loop and the liability there, absolutely true, but it's here for us. So think about, and I think about this all the time, we live in a world where we're resource constrained, right? Across everything that we do. Everybody's resource constrained. I don't care how you cut it. So what we have now is a set of technologies that allows us to do resource optimization. Like if you really take away everything and you think fundamentally, what are we trying to do? We're trying to take our limited resources and apply them where they have the highest benefit. So instead of going down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? I want to go to 6 first because I know I can get the biggest bang for the buck there, and then 8, and then 9. And if I have a certain amount of capacity to do things, right? I want to expend that capacity where it has the highest likelihood of gain. Sure. And those tools now exist. And not only do the tools exist, but the data systems and networks in the United States, and I think in other geographies, are slowly maturing so that we're going to see what's essentially like an internet. Like imagine the internet before it happened, everyone was like, I don't know what it's for. It's for scientists, to talk to other scientists. That's great. But what happened then? We came along with e-commerce. You're like, hey, I can spend money on the internet. Right. And suddenly, boom, and look at, the guys who figured that out all have rocket ship companies now, right? Which is great. But the same thing is going to happen in healthcare and the life sciences. Our internet is coming, right? And it has to do with the specialized data and processes that we have in our specialized regulatory environments, which all exist for really good reasons. But instead of them all being like chopped up, they're now kind of open if you know how to thread them all together. And now those resource tools can be put to use. The people who put the resource optimization to use first are going to benefit financially and are going to end up being the winners in this marketplace that's coming together.
Agreed. Mika Newton, CEO of xCures, real pleasure to have you on. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Will. It was a wonderful pleasure being here.
Yeah, I'd love to have you back. Thank you, Mika.